Hello friends, welcome to the Internet of Things video lectures. These are the first chapter objectives. We are going to discuss about few terms related to Internet of Things. Earlier, a computer processor such as Intel's i486 used to cost around the same as a small car. Nowadays, a chip with similar power is the price of a chocolate bar. When processing power is so cheap, you can afford to put processors in places that you couldn't before. Not just a business workstation or a home PC, but also a telephone, an electricity meter, a bedside lamp, or a teddy bear. We can make objects intelligent. We can make them think and speak. Imagine the alarm rings. As you open your eyes, you see that it's 5 minutes later than your usual wake up time. The clock has checked the train times online, and your train must be delayed, so it lets you sleep in a little longer. In your kitchen, a blinking light reminds you it's time to take your tablets. If you forget, the medicine bottle cap goes online and emails your doctor to let her know. On your way out of the house, you catch a glow in the corner of your eye. Your umbrella handle is lit up, which means that it has checked the BBC weather reports and predicts the rain. As you pass the bus stop on the way to the station, you notice that large LCD display flash is displaying your regular bus is due in 2 minutes. An ornament with a dial notices the change and start to turn so that the text on it points to the world traveling. Your family will also see later that you are arrived at work safely. All the cases we discussed use the internet to send, receive, or communicate information. And in each case, the gadget that was connected to the internet wasn't a computer, tablet, or mobile phone, but an object or a thing. So, the idea of IoT is rather than having a small number of very powerful computing devices like laptops, tablets, phones, we might have large number of devices which are perhaps less powerful like umbrella, bracelet, mirror, shoes, etc. This slide shows the equation of Internet of Things. It is worth taking a little time to look at the Internet of Things through a lens of the history of technology to more clearly understand how and where it fits. Internet of Things are growing day by day and being more sophisticated as other technological areas are also advancing. As technology has progressed, new categories of objects have been created in the electronic age. They have included telephones, radios, televisions, computers, and smartphones. As with most new technology, these devices tended to start out very expensive and gradually came down in price. Technology has always been associated with magic, and so this will be true almost by default for the Internet of Things. A flying carpet from magic movies was invented for effortless mobility and teleportation. But in reality, through technology, we have invented cars and railways, bicycles, and aeroplanes. Human connections from magic movie were used when one's loved ones are far away. In reality, postal services, telephones, and social networking help us keep in touch with our family and friends using technology. So, various objects drawn from fairy tales and fantasy literature can be the reality in nowadays. Well, then who is making the Internet of Things? There are many crossover points between all the disciplines listed. An artist may collaborate with designers on installations. A hacker might tinker at the prototype for a thing. A software developer might write the online component. A designer might turn the ugly prototype into a thing of beauty. And an engineer might be required to solve difficult technical challenges, especially in scaling up to the production. This was all about the first chapter as an introduction to the Internet of Things. Second chapter is about design principles for concerned devices. The objectives of the chapter are listed here. For some applications, you may think that design isn't important at first glance. Although The physical design of your concerned device may be less important than that of something you're going to set on your object with the extra functionality. The term ambient is not something to which we actively pay attention, and in some cases, as something which we seek to remove. For example, ambient noise in a sound recording. The term calm technology means system which don't compete for attention yet are ready to provide utility or useful information when we decide to give them some attention. For connected devices which are just sensing their world or generally acting as inputs, as long as their activity doesn't require them to query the people around them, there shouldn't be any issues. They will happily collect information and deposit it into some repository online for processing or analysis. When the devices start interacting with people, things get more complicated. A great example of this approach is Livewire, one of the first Internet of Things devices. A live wire is a simple device with an electric motor connected to an 8-foot long piece of plastic string. The power of the motor is provided by the data transmissions on the Ethernet network to which it is connected. So it twitches whenever a packet of information is sent across the network. Under normal light network load, the string twitches occasionally, but when network is overloaded, the string whirls madly, accompanied by a distinctive noise. Such extreme activity therefore alert the human nearby. One of the main issues with introducing any new technology or service that is radically different from the norm is getting people to understand and accept it. The main difference between a failed technology and a widely successful one is that the successful one arrived a few years later when people were more receptive to what was offered. The technology blogger Venkatesh Rao came up with the term manufactured normalcy filled in this regard. His basic observation is that we don't see the present, the world that we live in now, as something that is changing. If we step back for a second, we do know that it has changed. As an example, step back for 20 years and recall the era when mobile phones were just a fantasy. For a technology to be adopted, it has to make its way inside the manufactured normalcy field. Here is the case study of another Internet of Things wear dial. Some of the Internet of Things projects draw their inspiration directly from the magic. The concept of wear dial is taken from the clock in Harry Potter, which tracked the location of the members of the Weasley's family. It's a traditional clock controlled by an Arduino which could talk to the GPS services. The numbers on the clock were replaced by the common location like home, work, shops, restaurant, etc. With this wear dial, the current location of family member can be tracked. About privacy, when more sensors and devices watching us and reporting data to the internet, it is a matter of concern. Here is the case study of car parking application which failed to keep the secrets of its customers. This app had a feature called Find My Car. Using that, you were prompted to enter the first few characters of your license plate, and the app would then return 4 small photos of potential matches. According to a security professional, this app is already disclosing 3 extra images of other users which may disclose their confidential information in terms of license number. That means one can download a full list of license plate from all those parking spaces in a single web request. One important point of keeping secret is don't share more than you need to provide. The best way to keep a secret is to never have it. If you can avoid gathering or storing the data in the first place, you need not to worry about disclosing it accidentally. Nowadays, it is a standard practice that you should not store passwords as a clear text. You could also consider applying the standard mechanism for password encryption, such as one-way hash, to other pieces of data. One-way hashing is a cryptographic technique used to condense an arbitrarily sized chunk of data into a fixed size piece called the hash. It's called one-way hashing because there isn't an easy way given the resultant hash to work out what the original data was. Hashing algorithms are so designed such that even a small difference in the input data leads to a huge difference in the output hash. Apart from privacy, there are some concern related concepts that we need to discuss. With the number of sensors being deployed, it isn't always clear whose data is being gathered. Consider the case of camera deployed in an advertising hoarding which can check to see whether people are looking at different adverts. Does the data belongs to the company that installed the camera or to the members of the public who are looking at the adverts? When you are thinking of the networked aspect of Internet of Things object, it might help to draw an experience and design guidelines from existing network deployments. Even if you are building all the components of your service, it makes sense not to couple them too tightly together. The internet flourished not because it is neatly controlled from the central location, but because it isn't. So, have your object in terms of small pieces and loosely coupled. This loose coupling of your devices making them first class citizens on the internet, which means whenever possible one should use the same protocols and conventions that the rest of the internet is using. Most of the time, the end devices have massively disparate and diverse range of capabilities. As a result, building services which can be used by all of them is a nearly impossible task. This is where the graceful degradation technique can be used. It was all about chapter 2. The next chapter is Internet Principles, and the objectives are listed here. Using the internet daily is a first step in understanding it. Developing software or things that speak to the internet is another. And developing or debugging the software that runs the internet itself is yet another. Suppose you want to send a message to me, but you don't have my postal address. Neither you have phone number of mine. But you know I am from India and city Mumbai. You sent a letter to one of your friend who lives in Mumbai. Your friend sees that the letter is for some professor who teaches IoT. So he drops a letter at some college. A college authority inquires about me as we are from the same community and hence somehow I will receive your letter. IP works exactly like this. Data is sent from one machine to another machine in a packet with a destination address and a source address in a standardized form. Just like the original sender of the message in example, the sending machine doesn't always know the best route to the destination in advance. Most of the time, the packets of data have to go through a number of intermediary machines called routers to reach their destination. What if you wanted to send longer messages than fit on one postcard, or you wanted to make sure that your receiver has received it? What if everyone agreed that postcards written in a green ink mean that we cared about it whether they arrived? This is basically the transmission control protocol TCP works, the simplest transport protocol on the internet. TCP is built on top of the basic IP protocol and adds sequence numbers, acknowledgements, and retransmissions. Unlike TCP, but as with IP itself, in UDP, each message may or may not arrive. No handshake or no retransmission occurs, nor is there any delay to wait for messages in sequence. These limitations make TCP preferable for many of the tasks that Internet of Things devices will be used for. In computer networking, numbers are much easier to deal with. So, IP addresses are numbers. In Internet Protocol version 4, there are 32 bits to represent an address. So, total 2 raised to 32, that means 4.3 billion IP addresses are possible. IP addresses are tough for humans to read. So, IP addresses are usually written as 4 8-bit numbers. This dotted squad is still exactly equivalent to the 32-bit number. Although computers can easily handle 32-bit numbers even formatted as dotted quads, they are easy for most humans to forget. The domain name system DNS helps our feeble brain navigate to the internet. Each domain name has a top level domain TLD like .com or .in, which further subdivides into .co.in or .gov.in and so on. This top level domain knows where to find more information about the domains within it. The domains then have the information about where to direct calls to individual machines or services. If you have brought a server hosting package from an internet service provider ISP, you might typically be given a single IP address, but the company itself has been given a block of addresses to assign. Historically, these addresses are divided into different ranges called classes. These classes are Class A, Class B, and Class C. The rigid separation of address ranges into classes was not very efficient. Every entity would want to keep enough spare addresses for further expansion, but this means that many addresses would remain unused. Thankfully, we don't typically have to choose an IP address for every device we connect to a network. When we connect a laptop or a printer, it can request an IP address from the network itself using the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol DHCP. When the device tries to connect, instead of checking its internal configuration for its address, it sends a message to the router asking for the address. The router assigns it an address. This is not a static IP address which belongs to the device indefinitely. Rather, it is a temporary address which is selected dynamically according to which addresses are currently available. Around 4.3 billion addresses are available in IPv4, but the expected growth of Internet of Things is demanding more IP addresses. Nowadays, we personally might be carrying half dozens of devices which are connected to internet in terms of mobile phones, laptops, other sensors, watches, etc. This has raised the demand for more IP addresses. IPv6, which uses 128-bit address, usually displayed to users as 8 groups of 4 hexadecimal digits. The address space is 2 raised to 128 is so huge that you could assign the same number of IP addresses as the whole of IPv4 to every person on the planet and barely make a dent in it. At any one moment, we might have a laptop, a tablet, a phone, a camera, and a music player plugged into a charge. The requirements for large number of devices, however, are very different. The devices should be low power and very reliable while still being capable of connecting to the internet. Perhaps to accomplish this, these devices will team together in a mesh network. This is the version of IPv6 over low power wireless personal area networks. Even though we are getting close to the tipping point, existing IPv4 services will be able to migrate to IPv6 networks with minimal or possibly no rewriting. As well as an IP address, every network connected device also has a MAC address, which is like the final address on a physical envelope in our analogy. It is used to differentiate different machines on the same physical network so that they can exchange packets. This relates to the lowest level link layer of the TCP/IP stack. Though MAC addresses are globally unique, they don't typically get used to outside of Ethernet network. When you send a TCP IP message over the internet, you have to send it to the right port. TCP ports are referred to by numbers from 0 to 65535. If your browser requests an HTTP page, it usually sends that request to port 80. The web server is listening to that port and therefore replies to it. If you send an HTTP message to a different port, it might discard it. Ports from 0 to 1023 are well-known ports and only a system process or an administrator can connect to them. A protocol is a set of rules for communication between computers. It includes rules about how to initiate the conversation and what format the messages should be in. It determines what inputs are understood and what output is transmitted. It also specifies how the messages are sent and authenticated and how to handle errors caused by the transmission. And HTTP is one of such application layer protocols. HTTP is a simple protocol. The client requests a resource by sending a command to a URL with some headers. In HTTP, the messages are written in plain text in a human readable way, but not all protocols are writing it in same way. The messages could be encoded into bytes in a binary protocol. The HTTPS protocol is actually just a mix-up of plain old HTTP over the Secure Socket Layer SSL protocol. An HTTPS server listens to a different port, usually 443, and on connection setup a secure encrypted connection with the client using some fascinating mathematics and clever tricks such as DP-Hellman key exchange. When that's established, both sides just speak HTTP to each other as before. So friends, this was all about the introduction to the Internet of Things.